Anytime now. Ask the Podcast Coach for May 29th, 2021.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music that means it's Saturday. Had to throw one of those in there. I love the music. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com, and joining me right over there is the one and only Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Happy Memorial Day. I think a weekend here in the United States where we celebrate those who gave their life so we could squabble. So thank you all those people as well, and happy Memorial Day weekend to you.
And of course, because it's an American holiday, we're all going to get together and eat lots of bad food. That's kind of our tradition here in the U.S.
Yeah, drink a lot of beer. Although it's pretty chilly this weekend, I think. So, maybe that'll slow it down a little bit.
As I look at my watch, it is 48 outside, which means to our friends across the pond, it's like 12, 13 degrees Celsius, something like that.
Negative 17. I don't know. Celsius. I just wish we were all on the same thing, and I'd even learn Celsius for it. So,
yeah. But you know what would, if you're cold, what'll heat you up real quick? That's right.
Yeah.
We can get that coffee pour going. And of course, the coffee pour is brought to you by our good friend Mark over at podcastbranding.co. I saw somebody out in the Facebook groups this week say, hey, I need a logo made. And of course, I immediately ran there in the little box and put podcastbranding.co. Now, why do you want to go there? Because number one, Mark's a podcaster. So you don't realize how great that is until you work with someone who isn't a podcaster. And I've worked with Mark, Ask the Podcast Coach, Podcast Rodeo Show, School of Podcasting. If you need artwork, if you need a logo, if you need an entire website built, Mark can do it all. And if you just want to make sure your branding is on point, he'll even work with you to do an audit. He does great work. And the great thing is he's Canadian, which means he's polite. So if you are looking to look professional,
no stereotypes on this show.
No, not at all. Then definitely go check out Mark over at podcastbranding.co.
Cappuccino, hold the phone. Take me home.
There we go. And the way this works, if you are watching us live, you can go to askthepodcastcoach.com/join, and that will jump you right into the video. If you're with us on Clubhouse, you can raise your hand. And of course, if you are waking up and you're just not camera ready, shall we say? I'm not sure I'm camera ready right now, but
I'm never camera ready. Are you kidding me? I literally roll out of bed and just sit plop in the chair. So I comb my hair a little bit. So don't be worried about what you look like. Just get in here.
Yeah, you can go to askthepodcastcoach.com/live and ask your question in the chat room. Hey, they came out of their hole, though. The Apple has finally said something. And what I thought was funny about this, they sent out this email, says, we're writing to provide an update on the availability of Apple Podcast subscriptions and channels. We've been delighted by the response to last month's announcements, and it's exciting to see hundreds of new subscriptions and channels submitted from creators across the globe every day. I thought that was kind of interesting that they're like, hey, look at all the good stuff. And I'm like, okay. To ensure we're delivering the best experience for creators and listeners, Apple Podcast subscriptions and channels will now launch in June. Hallelujah. They're not going to put out anything else that's broken. Now, that's, of course, I'm saying that now. We'll see what happens in June. We will communicate further updates on availability and best practices to help you prepare your subscriptions and channels through this newsletter. Over the last few weeks, some creators have experienced delays in availability of their content and access to Apple Podcast Connect. By the way, I just checked this. I don't have stats. I looked, I had 1,500 downloads of one episode in Apple Podcast, and yet, sorry, not enough data. Okay, we addressed these disruptions, and we've addressed these disruptions and encourage creators experiencing any issues to contact us. So I love the fact that they did say, hey, there might have been a problem. You think? We've also heard from listeners and made adjustments based on their feedback with iOS 14.6, which was released on Monday, we will introduce additional enhancements to library. I'm pretty sure it should have been I don't know how you would say that, to the library in coming weeks. Thank you for understanding. We can't wait to see your new subscriptions and channels, and we're looking forward to launching them to listeners around the world soon. Best regards, the Apple Podcast team. So at least they've almost admitted that we kind of foobarred things, but it was
they'll have it fixed by the end of the summer, our summer anyways. So,
yeah.
By August, September, I think they thought this was going to be easy, and it's never. I mean, with that much data and those many users, and the way users are crazy about the stats and checking and checking and checking and checking and checking and checking, like I think they underestimated the whole thing.
Yeah. I guess the thing that always drives me crazy. I mean, at Libsyn we have our beta version, and I just kind of go, was there no beta version of this somewhere on a hard drive? You guys just kind of like, looks good. So we shall see.
I'm sure this was a pet project at Apple that somebody pitched to some executive, and they got a small team put together, and they were like, hey, yeah, we can do this. We can do this thing on the side, at a price. Might even have been a side project kind of thing. They're like,
Right.
oh, yeah, this will work out. This would be cool. And they didn't have the right resources and didn't think through all the planning parts of it, and didn't project management. They probably should have. It's, probably 4 engineers and no project manager, and you're like, it was just probably one of those things where they just maybe didn't think it through the whole way. Like, let's just go. We'll fail early and fail often. Those things that we say around when we tell people all the time, this agile methodology. Oh, just get out there and do stuff and fail. It's good. You'll get feedback, and people, they'll tell you what to do. That's what they did. Turns out customers don't like that stuff. You know what I'm saying? I love agile, and everybody's talking agile methodology right now, but customers don't actually like, especially in an established culture. Like, podcasting's been around a while. This isn't like it's 2004 or 5.
Well,
right?
And especially I would think if they're not prepped that, hey, what you're working is not the finished product. We're releasing it. It's our minimum viable product, and you might find a bug or two. If you kind of let people know that. I had somebody this week at Libsyn had something went a little left to center just for a second. And I said, well, keep in mind, Libsyn 5 is beta. It's not officially, like I said, they're not, we do our best to keep our bugs out, but every time it's like Apple, when you push new stuff, you might break some old stuff if you didn't test it. But, it's kind of interesting. People are liking the fact that we're orange today.
Oh, Denver Broncos. This reminds me, I feel like in Mile High Stadium. Dave, I don't think people actually like that. We say we do, but we don't. We complain about it. I can't get to you. I want to use this, especially when it's new functionality they've been waiting for. So it's a double-edged sword. You're doing it to give them early access, to get some feedback on it, but turns out customers don't really like that. Like, they want it right the first time.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. There's a small group that might, and that's the early adopters who want to be on the cutting edge, but that is far from the majority. I think everybody else that comes in, and then they're like, wait, what do you mean there's no ID3 tags yet?
Right.
Like, we haven't moved that over yet. Okay. It's coming.
Indignation of, I can't believe you didn't. And like, you're like, you see this in every development community going forward, so you get a bunch of enthusiasts, you get so it's early adoption, you're doing some things, you get some enthusiasts in there, you get some good momentum, and then the general public comes. And that is always where projects go off the rail. And I think this can also happen to your podcast. Like, so you start small, you're kind of edgy, you're doing some things, you have some small listener base, they get really passionate about it. Then the general public comes. And I see this happen on YouTube all the time. And then the comments just, are the worst, right? And not that this shouldn't happen. It's just going to happen. I think for podcasters, you have to learn to live through that time when you're shaking out the general population, right? When you're deciding who's going to stay and who's going to go. Because eventually, if you make it through that period, and a lot of podcasters don't, Dave, this is why we have all these podcasts that go for 3 or 5 maybe, and then they quit because they got some negative feedback. and they're like, oh, they're ruined. Their life is ruined because for the first time somebody's told them what they did is not very good. Now it could be good, but even stuff you think is good, people are going to tell you is garbage, right?
Yeah.
You can have 15 people say, I love this thing, and you get one person who like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen, and your life is ruined.
Yeah.
You have to be able to live through that phase, right?
That's it. And if you think about it, can I say a controversial thing?
Sure. Well, maybe.
If I say the word snowflake, you ever heard this?
Yeah.
Like people talk about the kids that grew up with everybody gets a trophy, and they I've heard, I don't know how like derogatory. It's not a great name, you know what I mean? But I've heard people talk about snowflakes. And if you think about it, if a snowflake starts a podcast and somebody says, well, your audio sounds like crap. Where did you record that? In a tunnel underwater, baking, bacon in the background and baking bacon. Yeah. It's a new thing. You throw it in the oven, cooking bacon in the background.
Oven cooked bacon's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying, with my bacon encrusted heart.
Yeah.
Well, but Dave, let's be fair on this conversation. It's not always like, it's not always the podcaster's fault that these things happen. I mean, I mentioned this when we opened the show. We live in a squabble culture now, and everybody squabbles about everything, and no one knows how to. I shouldn't say this broad of a stroke, but a lot of people don't really know how to give constructive feedback without it sounding offensive. It's hard because we do everything on text base, and that's negative to begin with.
Yeah.
And so it's both sides, right? You start something, people don't know how to give constructive criticism. They just don't. They're not good at it anymore. Maybe they never were, to be honest. So it comes from both sides. I mean, we complain about everything, man. If it's just not perfect, I'm going to just complain about it. So,
well, and the chat rooms made a great point. They're like, hey, you know what? A podcast episode doesn't stop me from doing my job, but when your software doesn't work, that's a problem.
Yeah, yes, but sometimes it's the way we say it.
Oh yeah,
right. I mean, the same thing can be accomplished. I have watched, even in some of the circles in the circles I run in the podcasting space, and I've watched people say things that's just nasty, and you're like, did you really mean it that way? I mean, was that the most professional way it could have been said? And no. It isn't. There's a lot more constructive ways. We just we've kind of lost the art of this of negotiating in the sense of, or even giving feedback, of coming at it from, hey, I want to help you on this. Here's some things you could fix. But no, we use these weird, we use these weird phrases in there that they just cut to the bone with people. So it's too bad.
And everybody's seeing thing is black and white. And Tamara, we're going to get you up here on stage in a second. I was listening on a podcast, and they played a clip of a guy who had taken both vaccinations. Like, he'd done 2 vaccinations, and then commented on the side effects of them. And the guy that took 2 vaccinations was called an anti-vaxxer because he said something negative. And it was just like, you got to be kidding me. It's crazy.
Yeah, we don't lead with positive intent. So unfortunately.
But yeah, we're going to bring Tamara up on the stage. She's listening on Clubhouse. So I'll make sure I've got the volume up. That always makes it easy to hear people. So Tamara, I thought I brought you up. We'll try that one more time. I will hit the plus sign. Gives me, there she is.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. How are you?
I'm good. I am new onto Clubhouse, so it took me a moment to understand there was actually a notification saying to come and speak.
There you go.
So
are you iPhone or Android, Tamara?
Android.
Oh, look at that.
Welcome to Clubhouse.
Yeah. Thank you. It's interesting what you're saying about podcasting, because I've been a podcaster now for a couple of years. Let's just leave it at that. And it's interesting, people will always come at you with the negative a lot. Like I had a lot of comments about people when I was starting out about, oh, your mic this or your sound that. And you just need to take it as positive feedback of areas that people are sharing need to be improved. And the best thing to do is reach out to people like yourself, come on shows like this and ask the question. So how do I improve my sound? What do I really need?
That's it. And you have to be able to kind of in some cases step back. And I always say, if somebody gives me negative feedback, the first thing I look at is, does this person have a point? Does this sound bad? Do I say, so much that it's annoying, whatever it is, does this person have a point? And if they do, then I go, okay, should I fix that? Yeah, probably. But if somebody says, Dave, your show's too long, I think it should be 7 minutes. And I go, that's interesting feedback. It is definitely longer than 7 minutes. But if I do that, that's going to completely change the show in a direction that I want to go. Then that person is not my target audience. So they have feedback and they don't like my show, and that's fine. You don't have to like my show. But on the other hand, if I put your feedback into action, it's going to completely change the show and from something that I don't want to do. And so that's kind of how I always look at negative feedback. But it is funny how, boy, you can give me 50, 5-star reviews and I can't name a single one, but that 1-star review that says a bad show, that's something like a bad commercial for a bad show was my 1-star review. We all remember those. So awesome.
Yeah, no, and it's funny how, you're doing a podcast and people complain about quality of sound, etc. And then you go out and you get the equipment that's actually needed to produce good quality. Mm-hmm. And then what you get is, why is your mic so big? Why do you have a big mic like that and you don't have a mic like the rest of us? And it's like, well, when I did use a regular mic, everybody complained my voice was tinny. Yeah. So I did research. I talked to expert podcasters. They said, well, here's what you actually need to get. And I listened to that feedback. I had somebody go work with me to understand gain. I mean, how many people actually know what gain is other than just the word? Actually, working through creating the gain at the point that you actually need it for it to be effective. So there's a lot also that goes on in the background that I think when people get into podcasting, they don't really know what they don't know.
Yeah, it's funny you brought that up because that was one of my notes. People are starting to obsess about having a microphone in the shot. And so mine is pointing at the corner of my mouth. It's not directly in front of my face. Mm-hmm. But I also noticed that if you watch clips of Howard Stern, the guy that's on the radio, there's a microphone in the shot. I'm like, why are we like, hey, you do a podcast. Can you do a video thing where there's no microphone in the shot? And the answer is no. I'm a podcaster. No. I talk into a microphone. You can always do a lapel mic and things like that, but now you're possibly sacrificing audio quality for the video and that whole 9 yards. But I think it's funny now how people are obsessing over is your chin that sexy that it has to be on video? I'm like, what's the deal? It's kind of interesting that, I think people will find anything to obsess over and the goal of perfection and such. So it's always kind of fun. So
I seem to think where two or more are gathered, there will be conflict. So you just, no matter what you do, you're gonna have folks who are gonna say, well, couldn't you do it this way and couldn't you do it that way? And I think at the end of the day, if it's good criticism and you need to change, you change it. If not, you say, thank you very much. That's not a direction I'm going. And we don't have to necessarily conform to everybody because that gets you a really bad show. Like I think you need to kind of you be the best of you, take the criticism that you need, change what needs to be changed. But if you start changing for everybody, you just get this wishy-washy kind of vanilla, like you be you, get out there and get your personality out there. Let people know who you are and change where you need to. So that's the hard part, is that there's no formula for that. You just got to do it. So Tamara, anything else we can help you with today?
Just one more point to build on what you're saying is that there is positive criticism that helps you improve. Mm-hmm. And then there's opinions from people that don't know what they're talking about. And I think it's very important also to understand that, because when you do have a big mic, and I don't think a lot of people understand this, you actually do have to get close to it, is what I've been told by professional podcasters, so that the sound goes correctly into the mic. And if you're not a podcaster who's researched it, there may be some feedback out of ignorance.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right, yeah. I always recommend about 3 finger width from the mic, and that'll get it. But the whole thing where you you put your Blue Yeti microphone in the middle of the table and try to pick up 4 people is just not going to work anymore.
Dave,
So.
I've sent people microphones to use for our podcast,
Yeah.
and then so they come on and they they sound like they're in Antarctica.
Yeah.
You're like, where are you? And I'm like, okay, where's your microphone? And they're like, oh, I set it over there. Like, I mean, they have to get up and go. And I'm like, why did you? Well, I didn't think you wanted to see it. And I'm like, no, I sent it to you so we could hear you. So bring that thing as close to you. And sometimes it's like it's hot lava. Like they don't want to touch it. I'm like, just bring that thing close to you. Like, can we get it as close to you as you can get it? And they look at me funny, like they don't want it that close. I'm like, no, trust me, it sounds better. Like you will sound better the closer we get this to you, not worse. I think the average person thinks the closer that mic is, the worse they sound. And so it's kind of educating them like, no. Get it as close as we can. Bring it in, a little closer. So it's a little bit of education there as well.
Yeah. Tamara, where can we
thank you very much. Yeah. I'm going to step off stage before somebody else has another question.
Well, before you do that, tell us what your podcast is and your website.
Okay. Well, I have actually, it's kind of, one of the key things I'm going to put out there is that it needs to be it needs to come from inside you in order for your podcast to have sustainability.
Yep.
It really needs to be part of your DNA. It needs to be a passionate thing. So what's happened to me is I've actually now got 3 podcasts because I've collected co-hosts along the way. So I have one podcast, which is Women in Safety, and it's a group of about 5 of us now that all talk about our experiences of doing health and safety. The second one is The Safety View, where my best friend Rosa and I talk about different hot topics in health and safety with other people. And the third one is Meet the Author with my friend Gary Wong. And that's just what it sounds like. We talk to authors of different books.
Awesome. Sounds like a lot of fun. Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much for coming up and on stage and sharing your opinion. We appreciate that.
Great talking to you.
Thank you. Now you're going to have.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, shoot.
But anyway, so some great points there. Yeah, thanks for coming on. The other thing that people were talking about, I was listening to James Cridlin, and this is one of those where I don't know that there's a solution. There's a show called Message Heard by a guy named Jake Warren, and this is not new. I guess the first thing we'll start off, Jim, do you have a Google alert set up to alert you if somebody says the name of your podcast on a blog post?
Yeah, so do I. Or even my name.
Yeah. Because what happened, what will happen is somebody will take somebody's RSS feed. Like you could ask the podcast coach, take my RSS feed, go over to Anchor, put it into Anchor. It will make a show. And of course, because it's Anchor, you can say, hey, do me a favor, Anchor, and submit my show to Apple for me because I don't care if I control it or not. And then you can put ads against that and earn your, penny a download or whatever. So people have been doing that. This was different. They downloaded the guy's audio and somehow edited his brand out of it, put new artwork on it, and then threw it on Anchor. And so the question that everybody's been trying to ask is, whose fault is that? Should it be Anchor? Is it Spotify? Is it, to me, I'm like, well, the dude whoever is doing that editing, it's his fault.
Can't be the host providers. We can't hold the host providers responsible for that. They're not that. I mean, they're just, how would they even check that? And like, was this person popular enough that they,
number 5.
Okay. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, that would do it. We're going to have to get, I think, as we think of this is going to sound weird, but go with me on this one. I think, we're to that point where software was about 25 years ago when we just downloaded it off the internet. We didn't even know what was in it. And now there's some semblance of like digital signatures and, you only get it from the store in some cases.
Right.
And Dave, I think we're going to have to get to a point where we're going to have to digitally sign in some way our podcasts and then, like I don't know how to do it, but there's got to be some kind of certificate of authenticity on this thing, or we're going to have to voice prints are going to have to be, because of this, it is easy both with images through the fake, what are they calling that? Fake, something fake. But where they can superimpose, like I can superimpose your face on
Oh yeah.
top of Harrison for deep fake. There we go.
Yeah.
For deep fake. And then the audio is even easier. Like video deep fakes take a lot of processing power. Audio
Right.
deep fakes can be done in Descript. So like I don't know what the answer is. If we want to protect on this, like if we want to say, no, you can't take my audio, add your own advertisements and republish it. It's going to take a technology solution to be able to do that.
Yeah, because I know in podcasting 2.0 specs, there is a lock tag. Like you could go in and say, basically say this is locked. And in theory, media hosts could then, when I go to import somebody into Libsyn, if it says this is locked, in theory, it would say we can't import this feed. It's been locked. We need the owner of the feed, which would be the podcast host or whoever, to go in, flip that switch. Now, for the record, is it that secure? No. I could easily look at that feed, copy it, paste it into a text file, upload it, and import it that way and change the lock to unlock. It's not secure, but what it does do is it shows intent that, hey, don't copy this feed. And in the event Anchor does that, we can all stand in a circle and go, shame on you.
Yeah.
Shame on you for not acknowledging that lock tag. So,
well, okay. The way YouTube does this is they somehow through the magic of YouTube crank out. Oh, by the way, YouTube changed their terms and conditions. And if you don't know, they can run any advertising against any video you put in there, whether you tell them that you're monetizing it or not. So just
here come the ads, kids. Hope you like them.
And the newest terms and conditions, if you didn't read through those, and nobody does, they just snuck in this. We can run an ad whether you say it's okay or not. So I think we're going to run into some problems with YouTube. But as an ecosystem, right? They run every video against whatever algorithm that if there's already copyrighted material out there, right? We know they do it for music. We know they do it for television. But now my videos, every video I put out, since I'm the video origin, if it shows up somewhere else, it'll show that there's somebody took it, right? Well, the distributed nature of podcasting won't allow for that because YouTube's a closed infrastructure. It's a closed ecosystem. So I think the only way in podcasting we're gonna be able to solve this is if we find some way to crawl every single thing that is out there. How else would you know?
Right.
Yeah,
they just happen. I don't know how we just happened to get lucky. Somebody searched for the show or what, but
no. Coach Dave says the technology you're referring to will come in the form of art traded on blockchains as non-fungible tokens. The blockchain is actually not the solution in this case. I've thought about this a long time, and I've been doing blockchain work for the last couple of years, and I wish it was. It would seem like it is, but that doesn't. I think we're gonna have to change the front end technology to the way we listen to these, because today there's no authentication that happens when you're listening to it. And I think Daniel's right.
He says it requires enforcing the existing intellectual property laws.
Yeah, he's right.
I'm just loving the fact that the F in NFT is for the word fungible, just because it's fun to say fungible. It sounds like some sort of weird character in an old, and then fungible came out and saved the princess. It's like, what?
I wish blockchain was the solution to this. And again, on the surface, it seems like it. You're each one of your podcast episodes creates a smart contract, and then all these other things. But if the players don't respect that, then none of that stuff works, because I could just I could record it off the blockchain, make my own version, and put it somewhere else. So it's I wish it was. Coach Dave, I wish it was, but it's only part of it. There's a lot of other things that have to happen.
And that's where I think Spotify needs to out the people who did it, so we can strip them naked in the street. And
how did we stop?
Shame.
How did we stop people from downloading and sharing MP3s effectively?
Well, that was my thing. I think this is going to take root when the Lars Ulrich, from Metallica. Remember when he started causing a fit, and then somebody sued a grandma. I just remember there was a story where a grandma had downloaded some music for her grandkids and got sued. And so I think once somebody sues somebody, we'll see. It'd be interesting.
Well,
So
the problem with thinking of it in terms of like, okay, what Apple did with MP3s and some of the DRM solutions we put into that is that the set of video or the set of audio there is finite in the sense that we have music that goes through some filters and people actually want to listen to it and some of those kinds of things, right? There's so many podcasts, Dave. The data solution on this thing alone would be so big. Can you imagine having to crawl and DRM all the podcast episodes that are being put out right now? I mean, the computer science solution on this will be amazing if we can even do it.
yeah, it's one of those things where I hear people leaning like, well, Captivate and Libsyn and Blueberry but they should be, checking people before you let your customer use your stuff. And I was like, no, that's just no. Like, not unless you want your hosting bill to go up by about 10 times, because now you've got to have a staff to check everybody who's coming on your platform. And what's to stop them from doing one thing, getting approved, and then the minute you say, yep, you're in. And I mean, there's a thing. I tried the Spotify music thing where you can play a track in Spotify. And it's you can't listen to it anywhere. I don't know. I think you have to be on the app, but not on the web, but not on a PC, but on the app. And when I finally found a song, it was like, hey, this is why I like this song, because you have to talk about it first. And I hit publish. It was like, we'll let you know when this has been approved. They had to approve every episode. And I was like, this is not ever. I'm like, it's a lot of work for nobody to listen to it. And then the fact that there was a person or some sort of algorithm checking this, I was like, this is a horrible idea. So.
Well, there has to be some financial incentive in this. Like, it just can't be done because we have to be protecting, and somebody who cares and has a bunch of money to be able to put this together needs to care about it from a financial standpoint. That's in the music industry. That's what fixed that. Right. It was all because somebody had a financial stake in it.
Well, who would never steal our content?
Oh, probably our awesome supporters.
Our awesome supporters, because, well, they already have all the bonus content. They don't need to steal it. So first of all, we want to mention James he's the teacher's pet over at the Dog Podcast Network. If, I've been listening to these now because we always kind of say it's a great podcast to listen to while you're walking around the block. Mm-hmm. And they're actually really good. There's some really great stories there and things that I don't have a dog right now. I've had dogs my entire life. It's actually making me think about getting a dog as I listen to this podcast. But they also have a contest going over there. Since you are likely, if you're listening to this, you're probably a content creator, and if you have a dog, you can actually submit your show and win $5,000. So check it out. They've got the dog edition. That's their podcast. They've got a bunch of things over there at Dog Podcast Network. And then we always thank our $20 supporter. And I did a boo-boo last week, Jim. So it's time to, that's right, make a big deal about Brock Cook. I went to move Brock's slide last week because he's a new awesome supporter. And in the process of moving it, I hit his slide. He didn't come up. He didn't get any love last week. So everyone together, say it with me, occupiedpodcast.com, occupiedpodcast.com. And by that, what I'm really saying is occupiedpodcast.com. It's a creative project exploring all things occupation, occupational science, and occupational therapy. Brock, my apologies for accidentally hiding your slide last week. But we also have the awesome Kim over at Toastmasters101.net. If you're looking to develop your voice, reduce your editing time, and improve your content, we might actually talk about reducing your editing time here in a second. Ed Sullivan at soniccupcake.com. How long till you go to Boston, Jim?
It's September, so it's
September.
Too long. It's too long, but gonna go see Ed.
Yeah, so you can, if you're looking for an editor, find Ed over at soniccupcake.com. Max Trescott, we were talking to him earlier about him. He's at aviationnewstalk.com, and it was interesting. I saw a thing on Facebook where Max was in a brand new plane, like brand new, and he was talking and he's taking a video with this thing. And on one hand, you're like, oh, wow, a brand new plane, everything's new, it's going to work. And I'm like, or not. It hasn't, I was like, I don't know if I would feel more confident or less confident about that, but
I'd let somebody else fly it first.
Yeah, I'd be like, yeah, let's just make sure everything's working good. aviationnewstalk.com. Shane over at spybrary.com. Shane has been doing something insane where he's like running for an hour every day for like 90 days straight. And he's like on 87 and he has not missed. So good on you.
Good
yeah. Glenn the Geek Hebert at horseradionetwork.com. Somewhere on my very messy desk, there's a piece of paper with the dates. Glenn is coming. He's going on tour, basically, and he'll actually be in Ohio. So I need to round up my Northeast Ohio podcasters, and we're going to try to do some sort of meetup with Glenn and talk horses and podcasting and that whole 9 yards. But if you're not in Ohio, you can access Glenn all the time at horseradionetwork.com. Felix at the Latin Podcast Awards. So if you like shows that are in Spanish, or just about the Latin community, everything is there. It's latinpodcastawards.com. So if you think about it, if you're an award-winning podcast, good chance it's probably pretty good. So if you're looking for something of that, this is part of the Audio Dice Network. Greg, I'm actually talking to Greg tomorrow we were talking about LLCs and things like that. So I reached out to Greg and I said, can you shed any light on this? So you'll hear Greg on the School of Podcasting in the future. You can find him. He teaches financial wellness at debtshepherd.com. The Indie Drop-In Network. If you've got a true crime show, comedy, or some sort of scary time show, Greg has an audience for you. Just go over to indiedropin.com and you can submit your episode and he will put it in front of his audience. Michael Delaney is out in the chat room. Baby Mountain Radio Productions, where podcasting and hard work are made fun. You can find him at babymountainradio.com. And if you'd like to be an awesome supporter, go to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. If you're looking for more of like a one-time donation, or if you just want to buy my book, Profit from Your Podcast, or if you want to sponsor Jim's mug, it's all there, askthepodcastcoach.com/store. So thanks to our awesome supporters. And I hear that a lot, like, how can I speed up my editing time? In fact, that was one of the questions I saw. What's the easiest way to do audio editing? It will really help, as I've just started. So a lot of people talk about Audacity, and that's definitely come a long way. For me, the easiest way to speed up your editing is to do better planning. Because to me, if you just kind of turn on the mic and wing it, you're probably going to have a lot of editing to do there. And when you do a little planning, well, then the good news is there's less editing. I know for me, aside from just times when my mouth doesn't work, I usually have a pretty good idea when I'm doing the School of Podcasting, where I'm going and what bullet points I hit. It's just a matter of there are times when my mouth just kind of decides not to work, which is always kind of fun. And Jim, how much planning do you do when you do an episode?
Well,
I know you're doing it live, and
yeah, it depends on the show, and it depends on what we're doing. For the Gallup podcast, we put up quite a bit of planning into them, actually. So, it kind of starts with the Eventbrite process of getting, names and bios, but I make them write for me kind of a 3 or 4 sentence description of, okay, what are we hoping to accomplish in this thing? So it kind of starts with that. And then maybe once or twice we get notes back and forth. They kind of have them put an outline together and say, okay, how do we want to proceed through this? We don't have to stick to it, but how do we want to proceed through this? What are some questions I can ask you as the host, and those kinds of things. And for some, we've even scripted them out. We've done that as well. And actually, Dave, this was kind of interesting. I was on a Zoom call the other day, and the gal she had her script up. So she had a web page up of what she was showing. She was doing a demo. And then she had a Word document up that was kind of a script of what she wanted to say. And I actually thought everybody was like, oh, your script is up. Your script is up. And she never took it down. But I actually kind of thought, it's kind of nice, because if there was someone who was watching this who was having trouble hearing,
right.
That would have taken the place of closed caption. And I was kind of like, that's actually kind of helpful, to have that up there. But so for some, we prepare a lot. For Home Gadget Geeks, we do some topical type stuff, but we try to do it based on experience. And that's kind of what you and I do here, right? We don't spend a ton of time. It's not like we have a format meeting. No, what do they call that when they all get together?
Oh, I know.
There's a term for that. Anyways, chat room will let us know here in a second. But it's not like you and I do that. We get together for a few minutes. We try to base it on what we're currently working on, right? What we're currently doing, things that we know. I always say, from the overflow. We talk from our overflow. I think on this question, they need to come at it from both sides. One is, okay, get better planning and get better practice. 2, lower your expectations just a little bit. If you're going to do this for any length of time, you're just going to get better as you go. So just keep doing it, but bring the expectations somewhere in the middle. Then once you find that, then you can start moving toward more and more towards excellence. But if you wait till it's you can't do your 100th podcast second. You can only do it on the 100th time. So just get out there and get practiced at it.
And that's actually the same advice I give to women when I date. I'm like, first things first, lower your expectations. Just like, that's it. Just this is what you get. So anyway, they're throwing out phrases here. Is it pre-show? Is it brainstorming treatment?
No, there's my daughter's a journalist, and when they all get together, they have this meeting where they throw out ideas and.
So I would think that would be brainstorming.
Well, it is brainstorming, but they actually have a term for
have
it.
A cool,
I forget. Because I was talking with Sammy about this, my daughter, and she's like, "Oh, we could do that." She named it at dinner, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting. Not really that important, and not riveting podcasting." But I think the point here is that kind of come at it from both sides. Continue to work on it, continue to get better, always be inquisitive about like, how could I make it a little bit better? And then, pull your expectations back a little bit, because no matter what you do, you're going to get complaints.
Yeah,
you are. It's just going to happen.
Well, last night I was on the Podcasters Roundtable. It was me, Ray, and the guys from Squadcast, and they were saying one way to grow your audience is to do video. And part of you kind of goes, well, of course they said that. They just added video to their platform. Of course they're going to say that. But they did make a point. It kind of goes into what I've been saying, which is you need to find where your audience is that doesn't know you yet. And I've had people that have found me that have joined the school of podcasting. And I'll say, how did you find me? They say, oh, I saw your YouTube video. And I'm like, oh, cool. And then you listen, and they said, oh, and then I found your podcast. Like, they had no idea I had a podcast. And I was like, so to me, that's one of the advantage of that. And so everybody, I see that a lot in the Facebook groups, who's doing video podcasting. And I think what they're really saying is who's using YouTube, because very few people, if we get like super curmudgeon-y, are doing video podcasts. Jim, I think you do. You send video down a feed, but I think most people, when they say video podcast, mean, am I using YouTube as well? And the nice thing about it, I mean, when you think about this, we're doing video, we're capturing the audio, and at the end of this, I can do whatever I want with this. If I want to make a video snippet or an audio snippet, I can do both. You can't go back if you just recorded the audio and say, you can make an audiogram, but we all kind of went, well, we talked about audiograms last night. And so, but keep in mind that it is going to add a little more work. Now you're editing 2 shows. It's because you think about it, I'm not going to the video. That would look really weird, but it's one of those things where if you've got the time and an editor, you can do that. Which one do you laugh?
I was just thinking about de-umming video.
Oh,
what would that look like? Like
Max headroom. All of a sudden, Dave just it'd be the weirdest thing.
It's one more thing on complaints.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe that's the topic of the overall topic of today's show here, for whatever reason. Most of the time they're true. They have a shred of truth in them. And I think you can't, I certainly don't want to come off as saying dismiss people's complaints, or don't, well, I can't change. I mean, okay, you and I got a major complaint about the amount of advertising we put in this podcast, right? This very one. Did we change it?
No.
Did we consider it? Like, I remember in that meeting, the pre-show,
right?
You brought that up. We talked about it, and it's like, I think it's on our minds now. It's like, okay, we need to make sure we quickly get through, and you asked me, are we appropriate? I think it's fine.
Well, right? The other thing I thought about that too is we did a couple shows where I was trying to thank everybody. And it'd be like 2 questions. Here's the $5 supporters. 2 questions. Okay, here's our $10. And it was just like that. I would say that guy's got a point. And that's when we went, look, you got to be at the $20 level to get a shout out. And so,
but it changed us, right? We considered it. You were like, okay, we're probably doing too much.
Yeah.
What can we cut? But what can we keep for the essence of what we're trying to do here? And I think that the mid show of the recorded bit is important to thank those. I mean, those guys are, and those men and women are important to us who support the show. So
Yeah. James has a question. James was on last week from Bros and Blokes. Right. Can you get separate tracks when you record via different video streaming options like
I don't think he
StreamYard?
talks like that, Dave.
No,
but,
nobody in England talks like this. It's a very weird English. It's it's from Devonshire and then from Worcestershire. And then like this,
yeah, I can't even say it.
Worcestershire. Yeah. Anyway, no, nobody talks like that.
Nobody
It's the
talks
world's
like
worst English accent,
It's
and
pretty
yet I
offensive,
continue to do it. Yes. I know StreamYard announced they were going to have different video thing. I know what you call it. I just mentioned them. What the heck? .fm.
Descript?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Zach and Rock from. Oh my God.
Keep
Squadcast.
There you go.
Jeez. I was like, holy cow, brain fart. Squadcast does that. And then not StreamYard, Riverside. Now I know people who love Riverside. When I tried it, I think I've told you the story before. I was very close. Like it was right out of beta. They're like, hey, here you go. Try it for a week. We'd love to get your feedback. And my feedback was I used it once. We developed about a 5-second delay in the middle of it, and I had to bail and use Zoom to finish the interview. And I know like Ray uses Riverside, and he loves the fact that you're getting this, 4K video and everything like that. This week I was interviewed twice by people using Riverside. Both of them sent me a link that didn't work. Like I would go to the thing, but I would see their name and my name wouldn't show up. And I would go to the chat and I'm like, I'm here, nothing. And then I'd have to go to their email and say, hey, I'm like, what's the deal? And they would then have to send me a slightly longer link. And I would have to say, I'm wearing headphones. So I think that might just be operator error. But the one guy straight up got kicked out of his meeting 3 times. So I'm not based on that. I understand there are a lot of people that love it. But every time, maybe I'm jinxed. Maybe there's something weird with my computer, but every time I go near Riverside, things don't work. So yeah, I'm a big fan of, well, if I wanted to do streaming, I would use StreamYard. When I do something that's not streamed, I use Squadcast. And no matter what I'm doing, I always have something recording in the background. I don't care what I'm doing. I always have 2 things recording. And when I have one thing recording, my sphincter is a little tighter than usual. It's the way it is.
It's always good. It's always good to have a backup,
Yeah.
in what you're thinking. It should always be done in 2 different ways. I always think separate tracks, and there's appropriate places for them for sure. So don't hear me say you shouldn't do this, but boy, if you want to add a level of complexity to your audio editing.
Man, I'm glad you said that. Because Jim sounds great, I sound okay. When I used to do the separate tracks, and the only benefit was I could pan Jim about 10% left and me 10% right. Ooh. And but it was this extra effort. And when I had to cut, it was just, and then I was like, unless there's something really weird going on, I'm going to be using the stereo mix from the Rodecaster. I don't need it.
There's great applications for it. And if you're trying to do an interview and you got a barking dog in the background, or it's somebody with a phone that's on or whatever. But wow. I mean, you're really going to spend some time. I mean, that's a 6-to-1 ratio on editing. So 6 minutes for every minute of audio that you have is probably going to be the formula. Again, not bad. If that's what you want to do, it's fine. It's going to take a lot. That's going to be a serious audio edit.
Well, there's a time that you have to look at, what am I putting into this and what am I getting out? And I'll give you a classic example. Last night, I started working on the June schedule for the School of Podcasting. When are the office hours, and when is lunch with Dave, and when is Ask the Podcast Coach, and things like that. And then I use a service. I forget the name of it. There's Ad Event, which is not what I'm using, but I might be using. And the other one is like Eventable or something like that. But it makes these cool little buttons that's like, I put in the details that, hey, it's June 17th at 7 p.m. Here's the Zoom link. And they then give me this code. I put it in it. And when somebody clicks on it, it says, you want to add it to your Google Calendar, your iCal, or whatever, which is cool because I want people to put this on their calendar. And that's a free service, the version of that I'm using. So but I can't do like reoccurring, like Lunch with Dave is every Friday at 12:30. Can't do reoccurring. I'd have to pay for that. And then somebody said, well, you ought to use, I think it's adevent.com. pretty cool service, yada, 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 free version. But if I want to do this or that, I got to pay for it. And I looked at it, was like $20 a month. And I was like, okay, I just wasted not wasted, but it took me like 45 minutes to do this. And I was like, is that worth $20 to not have to do this every month? If I just said, hey, and I'm just making this up, the first Saturday and the third Wednesday is group coaching. Lunch with Dave is every Friday. Ask the Podcast Coach is every Saturday. Like I could just do that once. And not only would it put a calendar, I could embed that calendar in the membership area. And I went, that's absolutely worth $20. Like I could go, I'm not as tired because I'd be going to bed earlier. So when does it, people often say, well, should I do this? Should I have an editor? Should I do that? Like when it's costing you too much personally, and I always say when the pain of taking the money out of your wallet is less than the pain of doing whatever it is you're doing, you'll take the money out of your wallet.
Yeah.
So.
Although sometimes people have a problem separating like their own time as money and money, right? I mean, they'll spend 3 hours to save $20. And you're like, I should have said 2 hours. They'll save 2 hours to save $20. Your time is $10 an hour. It's probably worth a little more than that, So, for I think you got to think through. I make this mistake all the time.
Yep.
Where I'm like, I'll just do it myself. When I could have really had a professional do it right. It would last longer and it would have been better. And so don't get pulled into that trap either. And listen, it's different for everybody. It's really hard to make that decision. I get it. I mean, I love grilling, smoking, barbecuing, that kind of stuff. But I'm having trouble, Dave, dropping $800 on a Traeger, right? It's just, you're like, oh, maybe I could do it with a $200 grill that I retrofit and you're thinking, oh my God, Jim, you're going to spend $800 just thinking about it. Just buy the Traeger. I still don't have it. Although I just did drop $850 on a treadmill, which is a little more important right now than a Traeger. So,
James says, I tried StreamYard last week with my Zoom H6, but it would only work as a mixer. Yeah, the Zoom H6. Yeah. That's why I love the Zoom PodTrack P4. The H6 is either a recorder or a USB interface. It doesn't do both at the same time. And the P4 is cheaper. So, but it's still a great recorder. That's the problem, is it can't do both. So in that case, you might be able to go to StreamYard. And if you're Hindenburg Pro, I think allows you to do this. You can say, record other applications and it will record. You might get an echo. I'd have to test this, but you can kind of say whatever you hear on this computer, record. And that would be then your backup. But yeah, it's I think we're all guilty of that. Just because you can, the P4 does both. I'm here to tell you, that's why it's on my desk almost all the time. I recommend this more than anything because it records 4 inputs. If you have people around a round table, you can do 4 XLRs. You could do 3 XLRs and a USB. So I'm connected via StreamYard. I could do 2 XLRs, StreamYard, and have somebody tap in via a phone because I don't know nothing about computers. So I could have Grandpa on the phone. I could have Jim on USB, and I could have Binky and the Wiz on channels 1 and 2. And I'll get 4 separate channels. And I'll get a stereo mix down. Go to supportthisShow.com/P4 to get yours today. So
I was hoping we get a Binky sample.
I'm on channel 1, man.
Oh dear.
Anyway, but yeah, I am bad at that as well. Just because I can do it doesn't mean I should. And that's why there are times that I'm like, maybe I should be farming out, because the School of Podcasting, I do weird things in editing and I add sound effects and stuff like that I don't think I could farm out. But I could definitely farm this show out. Just say, hey, remove me saying, 5,000 times, level it out, and, please make some. The biggest thing with this show is I go through and make chapter markers so people can jump from. And that's the part that takes the longest, because I end up listening to the show like 3 times. And when it's 90 minutes, it's a lot of time. What was that fun noise? Oh,
was that Clubhouse?
It was Clubhouse. Interesting.
What? Anyways,
I don't know.
Jason Bryant's checking in from Guatemala.
He's
traveling again, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. Hey, let me ask you this in the 5 minutes we have here on the recorded section, and if you're listening on Clubhouse. Stay around. We do a post show here, so you can stay around
we'll
for the
be
next
here
30
till
minutes.
12:30. Yeah.
So it sounds like we're going to end, but we're really not. What do you think, Dave? Any post pandemic, and listen, India's still struggling with this, so we're not out of the woods here by any means. But here in the United States, we seem to be getting some kind of handle on it. We'll see how well that goes. But in this kind of new economy going forward, you see any big changes ahead in podcasting? You see any opportunities out there as we think about that, or a status quo? I mean, and one, as you're thinking about that, one just might be pricing, because the price of everything's going up right now.
Oh,
everything. So
I just filled up my tank. Holy cow. Yeah.
Yeah. No, right on. And I'm kind of wondering, will that start reflecting in podcast hosting costs? Will that have an effect on gear and equipment? Is now a good time if you were thinking of buying something? So I said a lot of words there. What do you think? Anything in the final few minutes here?
I'll be interested to see how many podcasts die. Like they were born out of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
COVID's over. I'm back on the beach. I'm not doing a podcast anymore. I'll be interested to see how many people drop off.
Back to work.
Or back to work.
They're actually working now, and
Well, there were a lot of celebrity stuff. Tom Webster was talking about how there's a lot of celebrity podcasts out there because there was no work. So I guess I'm bored. I'm creative. I'll do a podcast. So I'll be interested to see how many of those. That's a great question. I know Libsyn is coming out with stuff. We're going to have a new feature called Snippets, where stuff that you type all the time. That's coming out in June in Libsyn 5. We just integrated with Canva. I know Buzzsprout is, adding stuff all the time. So is Cap. So more features are coming into the space.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be, it's weird because, the different reports are coming out that, 70% of a country is listening to a podcast, and this one's up to, 58 and this and that. So it's going to continue to grow, but I am going to be interested to see, here's what I'm looking for is where is the next, I'm trying to think of something that's not going to date me to death, but for lack of a better phrase, Jimi Hendrix was a guy that was super unique. I mean, he was black in 1968. Well, actually, he was black his whole life, but in 68, when all the other pop stars were white, he was not. He played his guitar upside down. He waved his tongue at the audience, and his guitar ripped your head off because it was so just rude sound. So it was unique. Then there are people so I'm looking to see, if we go back to, that's not a true crime show. I guess that's the other one. Like, what's the next? We haven't had a next big thing in a while. I've had two people talk about, and I don't know the name of it. I think it's called The Talk Shows. I've had two people say, have you listened to it yet? And it's from CNN, but it's a podcast and it's a series. It's like 8 episodes or something like that. And I saw it yesterday. I went in, I was doing something in Apple iTunes, and it was one of those big square things at the top. I'm trying to find it here. Yes. The Story of Late Night, Behind the Desk from CNN. And I've had two people said, have you listened to that yet? It's actually pretty good. So, I have not, and Andreas asked this, any news about the Facebook feature for a long format video? I have not. I know people are talking about this whole where you're supposed to be able to share a Spotify player on Facebook, and I've tried it twice and it's just crashed and burned. So either I'm doing something wrong, because that should be interesting, right? Because the difference before, you could put a video on Facebook and then the minute you scrolled it quit. And so everybody was getting 3, 8, 10. If you got 10 seconds on a play on Facebook, you were a god. And now they're going to have this thing where you can hit play on Facebook and then scroll, and it'll go down to the bottom right-hand corner. I still don't think people are going to listen to a 30-minute podcast on Facebook, but you might get longer listens, which hopefully will then lead to people going back and subscribing. I don't know. What do you think, Jim? What do you think's coming in the future?
I don't know. I don't know. I was hoping you would, because I'm clueless on that. We did a 30-minute LinkedIn Live this week, and that's the first LinkedIn Live I've done, and it's terribly confusing. And we got some pretty good numbers on it, and some really good engagement. Most folks stayed. I've always been really skeptical on like LinkedIn or Facebook that people, or Instagram, people will actually stay very long. Like they're scrolling through their feed looking for things to interact with quickly, and then when they see a long form video, I think they just punt. I think, but maybe the numbers show different. I'll need to go back. We just did that Thursday, so I'll need to get back with our social media folks and say, well, what was the real engagement on that? So I don't know, Dave. I think prices start to go up for sure. Like I would be, if you were thinking of buying some equipment, I think I would buy it now. Like I would lock in 2021 prices, because I think 2022 is going to be ugly for everything. So, I mean, I could be wrong. Let's hope so, but sure doesn't look like it's going that direction. Like all the sectors are being affected by that. So, you're going to make a big purchase, you might want to move that up.
There you go. SupportthisShow.com/Sweetwater. Where you can do that.
Right on.
Exactly.
No, right on.
Well, Jim, what's coming up on theaverageguy.tv?
I took a week off. It was my birthday this week, and I just said, you know what? I'm taking the week off. I'm not doing you can do that apparently. So,
and no one will punch you in the face.
No, I made it through just fine. I'm here. I have nothing to edit this weekend. We're having a big birthday party. It's my son's birthday too. So, we're coming in. So
on the same day?
Well, no, his is June. He has a June 1st birthday. So we always celebrate him together as a family.
Cool.
But so the kids are coming over. So if you need some time off, take it. So, but if you need something to listen to, head out to theaverageguy.tv.
When's your actual birthday? What
26th. It was Wednesday, May 26th.
I need to write that down.
Yeah.
That might. I'll have to double check. That might be my dad's birthday.
Oh, that'd be great. It was a great birthday. Maybe one of the best I've had in the 53 years I've been doing this. So
wow,
pretty fantastic this week. Yeah,
that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What about you?
On the School of Podcasting, I put out an episode last week that talked about your intro and the 3 different types of information and how you provide it. And a guy emailed me that said, that's like the best episode I've ever heard. And I was like, really? Because that was one of those where I was kind of like, eh. And so I was like, well, let's talk about content some more. So this week I'm going to talk about different things. When I edit, what do I edit out? And why do I think it's something that needs to be edited out? But, and I ran out of, boy, I'm just talking away. I don't know.
It was started over. It was probably my fault.
I don't have any. This is something I'm going to fix in post. But stick around. We've got some post show coming right up. So, and the music fades up.
Well, when your co-host talks too long.
No, you were fine. My problem is, I remember I looked over and I was like, oh, cool. When you started talking, we had 1:08. I'm like, okay, cool. You got done. And then I got just I'm writing down your birthday and I'm completely forgetting. Oh yeah, the timer's still going, buddy. Awesome.
Although, if you would have just kept going and that music faded out in the background, it probably would have been fine. Like you probably didn't need to point it out to people.
The joys.
Craig's birthday is on the 25th. So happy birthday!
There you go. Happy birthday,
belated
Craig.
Birthday. I'm kind of thinking birthdays turn into kind of weeks now. They're not a week. Oh. They're not just a day anymore.
My sister-in-law has a month.
Here's a huge change this year. I've never seen this happen before, but my LinkedIn IM section blew up with birthday wishes. And I never would expect that from LinkedIn. So they must have changed something where they're now alerting people on LinkedIn to, and you could absolutely see, you can kind of see this on Facebook, but you can absolutely see the algorithm or the program that alerts people because, Asia comes online first, right? They kind of start the day for us. And I was getting all these birthday wishes from Australia and India and first. And then as I woke up in the morning, you could see that transition. Europe, as I woke up, all my European friends were saying happy birthday. And then during the day, all the Americans were saying it, right? And you could almost watch like a wave go across as I was looking at the people who were doing this. So that was just a new, I was like, oh, wow, LinkedIn has really
turned into Facebook. Oh.
Well, sort of. At least there's some control from a content perspective. There's some social pressure for it to be kind of professional.
Yeah.
But I never, ever have gotten that kind of feedback from connections. Now this year there is a difference starting. I don't know. I guess this time last year when the pandemic was in full, I started building my connections on LinkedIn. And so we're on Facebook. I have maybe 1,000 or 2. I have almost 10,000 on LinkedIn now.
Wow.
I've been actively connecting to our customers. So there's a good possibility that got bigger just because I now have more connections over there as opposed to on Facebook. I kind of keep it just family. And actually, to be honest with you, during the election cycle, I
geez.
befriended tons of people just to be like, yeah, I don't want to hear this. Like, I'm not interested in this. So my Facebook friend count has gone down. Well, LinkedIn has gone, and I just don't have the conversations on LinkedIn that happen on Facebook. It's just
Right.
they're a little more civil. They're a little more professional, right? I find it a better place to be.
Yeah. We have a question from James. He wanted to know about the loops in GarageBand. Are they free to use? And somebody in the chat room said, I think it's clear to use them on YouTube. I do know this, that everybody and their brother has used them. So if you're looking for something like, I've never heard another show that has, this. Well, of course we got that, but I don't hear this anyplace else. I bought this from Sound Dogs many moons on a CD. So it's not a bad. The good news is it's free. The bad news is there are times when I hear a new podcast and I'm like, somebody found the GarageBand sounds. Not a big deal, but if they're clear for a podcast, I don't know. People do that with the music from YouTube as well. YouTube has a music library, and I think it's meant for YouTube, and yet they're downloading them and playing them in their podcast. And I don't know that the audio police are going to come out and, so.
James asked if I bought that treadmill for my birthday. Listen, I buy everything for my birthday. My birthday is all year long. Like I never, if I need something, I buy it. But James, no, just the timing. We were thinking coming out of this, we really needed something in the house that everybody, because I was going to buy a Peloton bike. And then I'm like, no, the ladies in my house will not. And thanks for just following me or connecting with me on LinkedIn, Kim. I appreciate that. But the ladies would not use a bike. It's just not going to happen. So we got a treadmill.
Yeah. Craig is saying he's got some pretty stuff from Story Blocks. There's also Audio Blocks. They have a bunch of blocks over there. I use Audio Blocks a ton. I do have the thing that Audio Jungle is part of. They have like a big umbrella. It's like $15 and you get graphics and videos and audio, and it's okay. How many people want to hear about Jim's treadmill? And also, if you're listening on Clubhouse and you have a question, feel free to raise your hand and we'll bring you up on stage. I'm dying to hear, because you got a Tredly too.
I got a Tredly too.
And it's a really interesting treadmill in that it's super thin. It has a handle that folds up, so you can almost use it like under your desk. Does it run with the handle down?
Yes, it does. So handle up or down, very low profile, doesn't have any elevations, but it's designed. It could go underneath a desk. It could go like underneath a standing desk, obviously, right? Or to put it away, you can put it underneath your bed. Like it just slides. Either you can put it up against the wall. Very, very light. I think 65 or 70 pounds. But it doesn't feel that way. It doesn't feel like you're on a cheap, there's some $200 treadmills on Amazon that I am sure would be like walking on paper. You're just kind of like, right. So $850 is what I paid, $850 US for it. Pretty pricey, kind of middle of the road for actually you can spend as much $3,000 or $4,000 for a treadmill if you want. You can do it for $200. So built-in Bluetooth. Dave, I just installed this week. I just bought a TV, so like a $65 TV stand for the front of it, and then put a touchscreen. I had a touchscreen monitor that I hooked to a computer. I've got tons of computers here, and so now I can get on it and touchscreen the thing to bring up YouTube and to watch a video or whatever I want to do. It's connected via Bluetooth, so it's got speakers built into it, so the sound comes up from the and it's a really good speaker. So I like it. Yeah, it's motivated me on really crappy days to walk on. And here's the beauty of it. I can get on for 15 minutes, get off, like in between meetings. It's been great. So it's kind of getting me walking again.
There you go. And James said, I heard people are running to purchase that. Hit it too hard. Anyway, ruined my rim shot. But yeah, or if you have sun poisoning, like some people, and you can't walk around outside during the day because you forget about it and you walk around the block 3 times and you wake up the next day with red itchy stuff. You're like, oh, that's right.
You need to be inside. Gabrielle asked if there's a weight. I think 265 pounds is the weight limit on this.
Yeah.
On this Tredly, thing. I'm approaching that. I'm hoping to bring that back down to something a little more reasonable.
Yeah, so it's I've seen that treadmill, and it's one of those things when you told me about it, I went over, looked at it, and of course, every time I go to Facebook now and every other website, it's like the Tredly 2. I'm like, I've got one. I've got a really nice treadmill.
Oh, that happens, right? When you just look at something once, and then all of a sudden you are just
Yeah.
getting James. If you want to talk about this, I'll let you
Yeah.
know. You can just contact me and we can talk about it.
The other thing that you mentioned, though, I have Peloton Light. I got a Nordic Track S22i, which is basically a Peloton. They've got live classes and all this. When you go to move that thing, I would love to know what it weighs, because
Oh,
I've
it's a lot.
rearranged my gyms. Oh, it's like,
Yeah.
that's my workout. What was your workout tonight? I moved the bike. It's like ridiculous.
I moved my exercise equipment today. That's
Yeah.
all I did, and man, was it a workout.
Yeah. Andre says, did you know about the new Spot? It's actually not new. This came out about a month or two ago, the car thing. And this
That's
is
pretty new, Dave. That's pretty new.
Yeah, it is pretty new. Yeah.
pretty new.
This is a head scratcher for me because it ties in via Bluetooth to your car system. I have one of those things. It's called my phone.
Yeah.
Now, from what I saw, the difference is it has a big knob, so it might be a little easier to operate while you're driving than on your phone. But to me, I was kind of like, huh? Because it's like, oh, you do this, it ties that. You need to have some sort of Wi-Fi in your car, which is your phone. So for me, I was like, oh, it's interesting because it's, for the person that, see, again, if you've got a phone, that's why it makes me scratch my head.
I'm kind of changing my tune on this. What your
Okay.
car do you have, Dave?
Don't know. Couldn't tell you.
A couple years old, 3, 4.
Oh no,
5?
it doesn't have. It has a CD player in it.
Okay, so it's let's say 10. It's
Yeah.
10 years old, and I just came out of a 15-year-old car. So it even I mean, my display was like this thin and this long, right? It had CD
Yeah.
player in it as well. And I had used the Bluetooth, and I put a Amazon Dash, I think is what it's called, in there to help with that. But I just recently bought a new 2021 Subaru Legacy, and it's got a big, gigantic 17-inch screen that's
Holy
in
cow.
that's in portrait, right? It's
Okay.
not
Yeah.
landscape like the Tesla, but it's in portrait. And so I have all these new options, including Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. And I imagine the Spotify thing can come. You can actually, there's a way you can update this
Yeah.
dashboard, all that other stuff. And I used to think too, like, I can just use my phone as this thing, right? You'd be surprised when you get a big 17-inch screen in the middle of your vehicle and you're like, I kind of want this stuff to play here. How that kind of changes. So I actually plug my phone in in this case, I have to plug the phone in to get Apple CarPlay. But there's a little, there's like on the passenger side, there's a little like shelf kind of thing for my phone. And I slip it in there. You know what that stopped me from doing? Texting while I'm driving.
Yeah.
Like, because my phone is hidden away, and the CarPlay stuff doesn't support any of those kind of things, but it does play all my podcasts and stuff like that. So I'm kind of getting more, Dave, into this where, like, yes, I have a phone, but I sure like it when it integrates in with the system. And this Spotify thing is a separate unit. Again, on newer cars, you can just kind of you should be able to just get some of this stuff on your in-dash entertainment.
Yeah, it's, like I said, it's going to make it easier to get to your stuff. It's a bigger screen. It fits into your air conditioning vent or whatever you got that. Runs on Spotify Premium. So if you're wondering, why did they make this thing? There you go.
If you have an older car and maybe you don't have a newer smartphone, these kinds of things are great, right? I mean, for me, the Echo Auto, there we go. Andres, thank you for that. The Echo Auto, which is having ALEXA for your car, right?
Mm-hmm.
It actually works out really well. It wasn't a hit. They didn't sell very many of them, but it works out pretty well. I guess it kind of depends on how your car is outfitted. What do you currently have in it? These things look super cool, and so for your grandfather who doesn't have a smartphone in his car, this may be something you can put in there to kind of help with it.
Well, and for music, I am all about Spotify. It keeps finding stuff that I've never heard of that I just love. I've got like 5 because I listen to all sorts of different music. So it's like, here's one that sounds like a bunch of stuff from the 80s. Here's stuff that's like people playing the piano, like singer-songwriter stuff. I love it for music. The listening to a podcast on the app is still pretty painful. That's to me, I'm like, hey, instead of spending another, I don't know, 100 million on a company, why not make your app a little more, user friendly to actually listen to the podcast? So you shall see.
I like let's see. So I think Garage Jim 401 says, yeah, what's up with these Tesla iPads smashed into the dashboard? Looks like absolute crap. I actually really like them. I have to admit, I'm a tech guy, and when I sat in that Legacy and I saw that big screen. Now, in a Tesla, it actually looks like they just glued a monitor to your dashboard.
Yeah.
It's just there, right? In the Legacy, it's kind of built into the center dash, and I really like it. Apple CarPlay and I imagine Android Auto would be the same way. You get a couple different options, and I kind of like throwing the maps up, and I have podcasts there, and there's some things I can kind of control. I've really liked it. David, I've had that car 3 or 4 weeks now, and I only have 300 miles on it. Like, it's not, I'm not in that thing. I bought a new car thinking, okay, we're going back to work. It's probably time. Still not driving in it a lot. So I'm kind of looking forward to maybe some road trips and doing some things in it. But it's sweet to have that much real estate.
Oh yeah.
In your car.
Yeah. When I went from, I had, the hybrid for Toyota, forget what it was. It had a nice screen and it was cool. And then a deer took it out, and I was like, well, I'm not really driving that much anymore. Don't really need a brand new car. So I got a used car.
You did the right thing.
Yeah.
Although not today. Don't buy a used car right now. That's nuts over.
Yeah. Adam Curry's stepdaughter sold her used car. And he goes, Adam's like, I thought we maybe could get 8 for it. And he goes, they gave us $11,000 for the car.
It's ridiculous. If you're thinking about trading in, now is the time. And if you can get a 2021 or even a 2020 that's been sitting on a lot with the price tag still on it. If you're don't do it needlessly. But if you need a car, now's the time to. There's some serious arbitrage between used, what they're selling used, and the price of some of the new ones. But don't think you can go in and negotiate on the new ones either. They're kind of like, look, we have 3 and we're going to sell them all tomorrow. So
that's it.
It's a crazy world right now.
Let's see. We got 10 minutes. Jim, if you were starting a podcast community, since we have we have 27 people still here and a couple people on, what would like the most greatest, awesomest, bestest ever podcast community, what would it have? What would it do?
Well, what I think in all the communities I've been a part of, and you're specifically talking about create the community around your podcast. Is that
so perfect. Picture like what would let's take the idea of a Facebook group.
Yeah. And
what would that kind of thing, but now it's not Facebook, and we can do with it whatever we want.
Sure. Yeah, and we're on Discord, and we really like it in the community.
Right.
I'm going to give you a little bit of an answer you're not expecting, but I've said this before. I think when you're striving for community, you got to limit the number. Like the best communities I've been in have been somewhere between 200 and 300, and it's heavily moderated. And it just seems like they get over that amount. Maybe they get over 500 and they start to get unruly, and there's too much traffic in them, and it gets too, I have a 15,000 member one on Facebook.
Wow.
And it's hard to, sometimes it's hard to get a word in edgewise, or you get bad information, and it's like, so I like this idea of kind of limiting. All the best groups I've been in have been kind of limited in number and are smaller, not so small. 50 is too small.
Right.
You don't get anything, but this maybe 300 to 500 range where you get some communication, but you're not overwhelmed by it. And it's a little curated. To me, those are the best kinds of communities.
Yeah, it's interesting because I asked my Facebook group, hey, if I moved this off of Facebook, because all I hear, like anytime you bring up Facebook, there are a lot of people throwing up in their mouth just a little bit. Like people hate Facebook.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, well, what if I started my own community in this case, for the School of Podcasting? Do you think you would contribute less, more, or the same? And they all kind of said, please don't leave Facebook. And I was like, that's not the answer I was looking for. So I've jumped into it anyway. We'll see what happens. I might run both once I get it up and going. The other thing is it's called Circle, is this community building tool. supportthishow.com/circle is the affiliate link. And it's actually, you kind of make your own Facebook.
Yeah.
And it's really pretty cool.
I've seen
And-
circle groups, and
Yeah.
it's just a great way. Like our favorite's Discord.
I was gonna say,
think
I've heard
no
Discord.
advertising yet, but no advertising, the ability to do what you want, threaded conversations, some of those kinds of things. So,
But I was like, I saw where they have these things for tags, and I thought it would be cool if I could tag you as like a tech podcaster, and you're a sports podcaster, and you're paranormal. But what I don't know is that if you can then filter and say, just show me the paranormal people,
right?
Just show me. So I have a thing into their community. But
James has got a question about using Twitch, and Twitch is a very powerful community. If your people are on Twitch,
that's it.
I'd stay. Like it's a now they do some, as they've gotten popular too, they're doing some wonky things. So
well, they just had a whole thing. I was going to read it today, but it's like 4 paragraphs long on using music on Twitch, because they're kind of like, hey, we're getting a ton of takedowns. Like, you guys can quit doing that now. But if you think about it, James is Bros and Blokes. Where do Bros and Blokes hang out? On Twitch, watching people play video games. So he might actually get some I did Twitch for about 2 months and got like
I don't get anything either.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, it maybe I'm too soon or whatever. But that was just like,
you probably didn't promote it enough, just to be honest.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. And with this show, especially, if anything, I go anywhere, I have to then go back and take it down, because I only want the awesome supporters to get that last 30 minutes. That's what the good news, bad news of that situation is. Anytime I can't just like, oh, just throw it everywhere. I'm like, nope, because if, I would be upset if I'm paying $20 a month to get that last half hour and everything else. And, oh, wait, the people on Twitch get it for free.
Right,
I'd be
right.
So
Dave, what's your Circle link? If folks wanted to check out Circle,
I believe it's support. Let me see if I got it. Everything these days is at supportthishow.com/ I think it's just Circle. It's circle.so or something like that. Yes, that is it. Let me throw that in the chat room. supportthishow.com/circle.
If you want to check it out.
That's interesting. And the other thing, and the other reason I did this, even if I don't end up using the Circle thing, I'm over there watching, I'm studying building a community, because they have a ton of videos. I signed up and got kind of they were running this special or something like that. And there's a bunch of videos on how to build your community. I was like, well, that's worth the $79, right there. So, but that's the other thing I did find out.
Pretty customizable too, right?
Very customizable. Yeah. And there's like, that's the whole thing. And what I like about it is I can embed my community. Like, you could be watching, let's say I'm probably moving the School of Podcasting to Podia, and I could have it so that there's a button in the bottom right-hand corner. When you click on it, boom, there's the community. I can also grab code. So if you're watching the Audacity course, the comments would be from Circle. And so if you're in Circle, you can see what people are doing in the courses. And if you're in the courses, you can see what other people have said. So its whole thing is we do community, where Teachable is we just do courses. And so, and half the people that work at Circle used to work at Teachable. So, but the more I look at Teachable, it's a great platform. I'm just like, I don't see where spending an extra $40 a month is going to get me anything. In fact, in some cases, it's going to cost me money. So I just went, So, but anyway, yeah, Jeannie is saying she just found us. And you know what? She's very polite. You know why? That's right. She's from Canada.
A good stereotype.
It is a good stereotype. So
we need to have more positive stereotypes like that.
That's it. Mark says, I'm migrating to Circle. He admins 12 Facebook groups. How do you spell a headache? Yeah. Some with 15,000, 29,000, and 38,000 members, all post and edit submitted. Our first reviewed by me. So that's why we never see Mark. He's busy, moderating.
I don't, I tend to think on the Facebook groups, I do most of my moderation as they're coming in. In other words, accepting them coming in. Man, I tell you what, I have, Facebook's gone through a serious problem with spammers, and I get dozens of them every day trying to get in my groups.
Yeah.
And so, I block them. I deny them. Try to keep the conversation. I really only have to, in the 15,000 person group, I really only have to moderate maybe once every other week where somebody posts something, and the group is good about doing it. So that you can get, I use my group for that kind of help too. So I can't imagine, Dave, I could not imagine approving every post.
No, that would be
yikes.
That's where you need
to have
to
no life.
Well, and you need to find some trusted people to be moderators. But I do one for my weight loss show, and I do a newsletter for them as well. And I'm like, hey, if you know anybody that, because I was pointing people back to the Facebook group, which Circle does automatically. Kim, it's support. I just had it. supportthishow.com/circle. If you scroll up, I put it in there somewhere.
Yep, it's right. It's right in the.
Yeah. But I told them, I'm like, hey, if you know somebody that would like this, share it. And God bless them, they did. Except right when you go into my Facebook group, it's like, if you haven't gone to logicallosers.com yet and signed up, you will be declined. Like, don't ask to be a friend because people
don't read those.
And they sure don't read those. So I'm here to.
They don't read those questions that you put in there. You're like, I need your email address, or I'm not going to let you in. And they don't include it.
Yeah. So then I have to message them and go, hey, thanks so much for your interest in the group. Please go over to logicallosers.com and sign up. Blah 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 blah. So, I totally forgot about Twitter Spaces. I was going to add that.
Could there be a bigger ghost town at this point?
Twitter Spaces?
The biggest platform. That's the biggest ghost town. I just don't. I've been over there a couple times, and I just have not. And it's just not. It works, but I don't see that many people using it.
Yeah, we got 4 minutes left. We're going to bring Richard. I didn't notice Richard had his hand up. So
awesome.
Richard can't join right now, but maybe later. Okay. Well, Richard, we're here every. I tried to bring you up. That's really weird. Let me try that again. So if I go to Richard, he's raising his hand. I click on the microphone. Riveting audio, Dave. And there we go. Richard is on board. Let me make sure the microphone's up. Richard, what can we help you with?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Great. This is not about podcasting. This is about software updates on automobiles for the interface that you're so excited about, Jim.
Sure. Yeah.
That the nightmare of a world of manufacturing, that the idea of an upgrade is putting air in your tires. They have no concept of software updates.
No, they really don't.
So I own a perfectly delightful Ford Fusion hybrid plug-in, and it can't upgrade my Android Auto unless I pay them $1,300.
Right.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So what I'm pitching for is I want the phone manufacturers to be the people that are in charge of the interface to the automobile, and the automobile is just a dumb box that connects us.
Yeah, that's been tough in that space. They haven't done a very good job. It's not being very kind to podcasters that way, because it's made it difficult to listen at times. And we'll be, Subaru has been a little better at this than most of the manufacturers, but we'll see with this. We'll see with this coming up. I have no idea. There is a update link in there where I can, in theory, go and get updates for it. So we'll see how it goes. I'm not saying it's great, but you are totally right that, Richard, that the auto manufacturers are terrible at this. We should never really rely on them. And Ford partnered with Microsoft at one point in time, and that was just a disaster. So how
many times have you heard that phrase?
Yeah,
and Microsoft bought it, and it just went downhill from there.
Oh my God, I'm shocked. I'm stunned.
I know. Yeah, so I totally agree with you. From a podcaster standpoint, I think for today, we still encourage folks to listen to this on their phone in the car if we can. That's probably going to be the best possible scenario.
Well, I can get things to get the car to connect Bluetooth, but I can't get anything. I see modern cars where you touch the screen and you pick what you're doing, and you can pick the app you want by tapping the screen. Because of the lack of ability to update the software in my automobile, I have none of that.
Richard, what year is your
2015?
Oh,
2015.
Yeah, no, they weren't thinking they weren't thinking about that kind of stuff in 2015. I mean, we're barely getting good stuff right now that has that kind of capability. So, and then the chips were different, and they were because they want everything standard. Like they don't want
Right.
the customer to be able to change stuff. That's too much
That's not how it
responsibility.
works at the dealer.
No,
Okay,
right on.
yeah.
Or come back in and give us $1,300. So
Yeah,
I
Okay.
would listen. I would make that upgrade on your next automobile. The next car that you buy it's gonna be a little bit better. But when you buy a vehicle, I would always think this is always the way it's going to be. So don't think, don't hope for the future. It's always.
I wish I'd had that voice in my head because I'm a guy that drives. My last turbo diesel wagon I drove for 460,000 miles. So I'm the wrong guy to like.
I have $250,000 on my Honda Civic. So me too. This is my first new car in 15 years. So I'm with you.
Well, that's how. Yeah, no, I'm the same way. This is my first car, and new for me. It was new. I only bought it 2 years ago, but for me it was new, and it was the first car I bought in 15 years. So that's my downside. I mean, I can make it work, but I have a string of bad words that I won't use on air about how I feel about it.
Good call. We'd have to mark it explicit in Facebook.
Yes,
so,
very extremely explicit.
Richard, thanks for listening to us on Clubhouse.
Thank you.
Thanks for jumping in. Yeah, you bet.
You bet. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Thanks. You bet.
Bye-bye.
You bet. Well,
All
Dave,
right.
I think it's a wrap on the weekend. Everybody be safe this weekend as they're out and about. If you're here in the United States and celebrating the holiday, be extra safe.
And here's a thought, something I've been doing. Instead of saying, how many burgers do you want? And you go, 2.
Yeah,
Start with one and see if you want the second one. Because I've been doing that. And a lot of times I don't need the second one.
Yeah, you don't really need to.
Dropped 2 pounds this week.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So keep that in mind. And I was going to do it, but I'm not. Behind the scenes, I was going to do another.
Oh, maybe we could make up for it.
Because the first one was such a train wreck.
We could record it right now and you could cut it and then put it just practice it, second time.
They need to make that much bigger though. I mean, I literally have to stand on my head. I can kind of see it. The problem, what I need new glasses.
Dave, what's going to be on the School of Podcasting this week?
This week, we're going to be talking again about how to shape your content. And I'm going to, here's the fun thing. I don't think this is legal. I'm doing it anyway. Drew Barrymore is a horrible interviewer, and I'm going to explain why and play clips on how she is the queen of Me Too. Not the hashtag Me Too, but Me Too, as in, hey, Jim, do you like chocolate? Me too. And now I'm going to spend 4 minutes talking about how much I love chocolate. And I'm like, no.
You mean the interviewer who takes over the conversation? That's what you really mean.
Yeah, that's some of the stuff that's coming up. Jim, what's coming up in 20 seconds for the averageguy.tv?
Yeah, lots of technology. So if you want to head over to the site, I didn't produce anything this week, but theaverageguy.tv.
Beautiful.
And that's how you do it.
That's it. So good.
Super fun.
Yeah, right. Drew Barrymore, because I'm interviewing, and then I got to get out of here. I got to go help my brother.
I'd stay away from the Me Too thing.
Yeah, that I'm not.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
I need to come up with a new phrase.
You do. Yeah. Well, I just
same here would be a good way of saying that.
I think that's a good way. I think that's an appropriate way to say it. Yeah, because interviewers they'll ask a question or asking the question that has the answer in it.
Well, here's my favorite from Drew. If Drew is interviewing you, Jim, she'd be like, "Okay, Jim," and I'm not going to talk out of the side of my mouth. That would be disrespectful. I was tempted.
Don't do it.
But Jim, you have the averageguy.tv, and it's so great. I've listened to the episodes, and you talk about the technology, and it's awesome. And I know you do the cigar thing and all of that cooking and the stuff, and I just love it. That's her question,
right?
And you're like,
"Yeah,
thank you." It's like,
yes,
yeah. So I don't know. It's interesting, but anyway, thanks to everyone. I'm off to put on my winter coat and help my brother.
You gonna go shovel some snow?
Yeah, and help him open his pool.
All right, Dave.
So,
have a good weekend. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.